Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Eelwood and today we are looking at Lenna's Inception, a new game just released on Steam, and to answer the ultimate question as always, is it worth your time? So, Lenna's Inception is a single/multiplayer indie pixel art action-adventure RPG. Set in your classic fantasy medieval world, you'll be assuming the role of hero due to some very unusual circumstances, taking on the many Legend of Zelda-inspired dungeons and enemies, all while uncovering a surprisingly interesting story as you go. So, aesthetically speaking, we may as well start with the game's greatest visual asset. A big part of what makes Lenna's Inception so unique is it actually allows you to manually choose between an 8-bit or 16-bit art style to the game as you play. This feature completely changes the aesthetics of everything in the game. Enemies, bosses, the environment, literally everything. I personally kept it on the 16-bit version due to the OST quality, which we'll go into later, but both modes are just as good as each other. Colours used are pretty pale and light in general, considering the type of game this is, which does help maintain a bit of seriousness to the game rather than your over-vibrant RPG. If anything, reminds me more of a Game Boy Advance Pokemon game rather than an actual Zelda game like Link to the Past. Textures and detail also match this style very well due to lightly shaded environments like trees or rocks, and consistent simple designs for floor and wall designs. Lighting effects are pretty non-existent though, other than your standard underfoot shadows and enemy flashes. With things like magic or explosions, these are technically sprite animations rather than effects, due to the devs obviously going for the more traditional looking 16/8-bit game. The UI is brilliant, everything you need to know along the bottom of the screen with no hindrance on your focus area at all. Inventory and map screens are just as nice due to their simple design and easy to understand layouts, with the map specifically being literally perfect. Both simple and descriptive while being especially useful while dungeon delving. Level layouts are awesome, perfect size with just the right amount of ground clutter, nice open spaces for combat, and pretty fun tight designs for tackling puzzles. Brilliant job. Character and enemy designs are just as good as the rest of the game's aesthetics. Nice, simple, light-hearted designs for pretty much every character in the game, with simple, to-the-point animations, which I prefer anyway. Boss designs, however, are considerably more impressive due to their very unique sprites when doing specific attacks, which on a few bosses I was very impressed with. Yes, I know, I'm only describing the 16-bit visuals of the game, because that's the mode I played at least 98% of my playthrough on, but to elaborate, the 8-bit art style is very accurate. Very limited colour scheme, textures and detail are obviously a lot more basic, and boss designs aren't anywhere near as impressive to obviously relate to the 8-bit style theme, which again they have executed very well. Overall, a pretty top-notch visual effort made regardless of your preferred art style. The OSTs in Lenna's Inception are actually very good. Plenty of custom, crisp, high-quality 16-bit inspired FX sounds used to create pretty catchy soundtracks with memorable main melodies that suit the gameplay extremely well. I may be wrong, but I'm pretty confident they've taken a few effects from a PS1 sound font directly, because they sound almost identical, which I like anyway. Some of the melodies even appear to have out-of-tune sounds here and there, which are obviously on purpose to maybe give more of a serious vibe to the game, and if anything, appeal to the actual storyline anyway. And I have to say, some of these tracks are actually amazing, so someone needs to upload an OST playlist for this game ASAP. As I said earlier, I didn't play on the 8-bit version of the game at all really because of the quality difference between 8-bit and 16-bit tracks. But regardless of my preferences, the 8-bit tracks are just as good and provide more of an original Game Boy/NES feel to them, which they have done pretty well. It's not that I don't like 8-bit, in fact there's quite a few 8-bit tracks I love, but given the choice, I'd honestly choose 16-bit every time. Everything else sound related, like attacking, the various enemy sounds and several stage sounds are all very high quality and relevant to the gameplay, with nothing I noticed that would reduce immersion from a sound perspective. Definitely a successful sound quality to match the successful visuals of the game. Now for the gameplay. So Lenna's Inception doesn't technically have any difficulty options to choose from on its standard story mode. It is what it is whether you like it or not. It does however offer quite a few game modes to choose from for a tougher challenge. These include 1 dungeon mode, 3 hearts mode and reflex mode, all of which have their own leaderboards associated with them, which appear to be all across Steam rather than just your friends list. I should also note that although this is an action adventure RPG, all modes including story mode provide randomly generated worlds via a seed system, very similar to Minecraft, except instead of being completely random, you obviously have your points of interest and storyline stay the same, giving a relatively fresh experience every time you play. The base concept of the game is pretty much identical to Zelda. Explore the world, take on dungeons, explore more of the world by obtaining new items until the game is pretty much completed. The lore in Lenna's Inception, I have to say, is pretty deep considering it's a very simple game, especially towards the end. To elaborate, you obviously play as Lenna, a teacher at a small school of some sort. Your school gets glitched, as they call it in-game, resulting in your student being presumably trapped inside. You stumble upon Lance, the hero, as he's referred to. You ask him to rescue the students at your school. He ends up getting killed while you're attempting to teach him sword swinging. So naturally, you get his power of fortitude, take all his stuff from his corpse, and proclaim yourself as the new hero. As you can probably tell, there are a crazy amount of references to a certain game series which can be extremely obvious at times. But regardless, when you start to uncover deeper story as you play, there are plenty of plot twists and joining of the dots that, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil for you. So once you've chosen your game mode and world seed, you get quite a few in-game cutscenes and advice pop-ups at the start once you actually leave the school. But no intro cutscenes, cinematics or anything like that. Controls are pretty much as you'd expect from a game like this. You've got your basic up, down, left, right movements, your primary weapon attack, 3 customizable equipment buttons, and your block/jump button. Your primary weapon will always be some sort of melee weapon, which can have alternative attack methods depending on what weapon you have equipped. The equipment buttons are similar to Ocarina of Time. Assign an item to one of 3 buttons at the bottom of the screen, then press the corresponding button to use said item. These include bombs, bow and arrow, or a lighter, just to name a few. You can even hold down an equipment button to get a slightly different effect, like your arrows piercing all enemies in a line, or your lighter causing a dash of flame on the ground. And finally, your block/jump button depends completely on what you have equipped in your shield slot. If it's a shield of some sort, you can obviously block, becoming immune to damage taken from the front, or you can equip a spring, which instead allows you to jump to avoid certain damage taken and to jump over certain obstacles. Not a lot of controls to use, but let's be honest, that's all you're really going to need anyway. You also have a few other gameplay mechanics like equipping different tunics to get a different set passive, obtain key items like a bicycle to teleport from the world map, or fish leather shorts which allow you to swim. You even have an entire screen to make phone calls from, which through my whole playthrough I didn't even use once. You also have a few other things like vendors to purchase items from, vendors to upgrade equipment, and the pretty important pair of glasses item you get late game that lets you, quote, glitch the game by revealing certain glitched objects and allowing you to do the stage warp like they do on the original Legend of Zelda speedruns. Not exactly the easiest item to explain, but this is what it looks like. I've likely missed out a few smaller details, but that's pretty much all you need to know. Combat in Lenna's Inception is again just like Zelda. Most enemies attempt to deal damage to diminish your heart pool at the top of the screen until you are basically dead. Some enemies are immune to damage taken from the front, some can teleport about the place and use ranged attacks, and most of them attempt to swarm you with sheer numbers. I should also mention that at some point in the game, you can get a pet bat that deals damage to enemies near the player, which are used for the entire game. Either way, if you like the combat in 2D Zelda games, this game is for you. Boss fights in the game, however, are much better and raise the standard bar of the game pretty high. Each boss has pretty unique methods of attacking, usually take a moment or two to figure out how they are killed, and most of the time have a phase 2 where they transform into an abomination version of themselves and are even harder to kill. These fights being the best part of this game in my opinion. And let's not forget, the game even supports local co-op gameplay as well, so everything mentioned can be enjoyed with a friend, which I'm sure a lot of you fans out there have dreamt of since 4 Swords. Definitely a fun gaming experience that matches the overall quality of the game brilliantly. So for the ultimate question, is it worth your time? Its high quality, fun gaming experience provide good challenge and amusement that for a 2D inspired Zelda game has enough content to stand on its own 2 feet. I'm going to give this game a 4-star or 80 out of 100. The amount of very obvious references in this game is nuts. I like the gentle nudges the level designs give you to prevent you from wandering into areas you shouldn't, depending on what items you've unlocked so far. The fact you can teleport willingly to points of interest in a Zelda-like game, and even to dungeon entrances, is so fucking good. I like how the overworld OST changes slightly towards the end of the game, nice touch there. A lot of the characters are aware that they're actually in a game, which at times can be pretty funny. They even added a stock exchange mini-game for making gold, which I suppose is somewhat educational from a certain perspective. It would have been nice if they included an auto-loot mechanic where dropped items would heat-seek to your character until collected. I don't like how you have to choose between equipping a shield to block or a spring to jump, when each of these should have been given their own allocated button. The phone call feature, although interesting, was pretty pointless, and more obtainable pets in the game would have been amazing. When I found out I could have the chicken and the bat at the start of the game, I was expecting at least 10 more pets to follow you around to do different things. I was unfortunately disappointed when I found out that there wasn't. But saving the best for last, the plot twist at the end was brilliant, and I'll be honest, it did take me by surprise. A bit of a shame I can't talk about it without spoiling it for you guys, so you will have to buy the game for yourself to figure out that one. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more games I'll be reviewing each week. Sorry if this video has been uploaded late, but as expected, I have been very busy recently. But once everything has settled down in a few weeks, I'm going to be a lot more consistent than I've ever been. Also, nice to see a lot more subscribers over the last few weeks. I'm glad you're all enjoying the content. At this rate, I'll be doing my 500 sub special before I even get a chance to do my 100. But with my estimated schedule, we should be fine. And as always, all the best guys. Take care.